Hi, this is Paolo. Today I'm going to be drinking the 1997 Red Ribbon from Menghai Tea Factory, and I'm also going to talk to you about a little bit more about other semi-aged teas. Here I have another Menghai Tea Factory 7502 from 2001. Here I have a book that talks about, like, these are like all the this is the 1998 to 2003. These are all the Menghai Tea factories, like maybe 1/3 of the book is Menghai and the other 2/3 are other factories, but everybody mostly cares about Menghai. The chief characteristics of tea on cakes on this book is that they are expensive. A lot of them are quite famous, there's quite a lot of them. A lot of them have pretty similar wrappers and it's really hard to tell what is what. And in general, it's this category of tea, semi-aged. So as a reminder, if we divide tea in Yangsheng, first aging stage, semi-aged, aged and fully aged, semi-aged is the color is about it's darker than orange, so it can either be on the reddish kind of side or it can be on light brown kind of side. You will see the steeping. This is the kind of category of tea we're talking about today. And it's a bit awkward because while in the two categories before, there is quite a lot of ancient tree puerh, old tree and ancient tree, and even 100% pure ancient tree. And for older teas, the teas have been, it's possible for the tea to have aged enough in a dry way. So both is dry storage, so it doesn't have any storage flavors, but also is really, really smooth. For instance, quite a lot of teas we sell from Mr. Chen, even if it's from the late 90s, it's still what we would call more aged because it spent 3-4 years in Hong Kong and then dry in Taiwan, and as a result, it comes out darker than this kind of tea will. Well, this kind of tea, the 97, has been stored dryly in Taiwan since its inception, and as a result, it's still quite a bit drier. Actually, this 2001 7502 is a cake I got from Mr. Chen as well. But because it's 2001, it's still more on this semi-age stage. Alright, let me start by rinsing this. So I'm using a slightly bigger teapot than usual because something about this age of tea that it's a little bit more fussy in brewing than both that excellent quality tea of ages before and after. So after it's really quite smooth, so you can just heat it really, really hard. Before, it's old tree, so you can just heat it really, really hard. The whole tree cakes only, obviously not the factory ones. So actually, I find this harder, the hardest category to brew of all actually. Talking about high quality tea only though. Obviously, for medium quality tea, if it's really young, that will be really hard to brew as well. Well, to brew is something that I would actually want to drink anyway. Nice smells. I got this from a group of people called the Dry Store Gentlemen. They're based in Taiwan. As their name says, they love their storage really dry. This is something that I found that the more people drink puerh and the more they're really into it, the more they will tend to prefer drier and drier storage. So yeah, it's like the typical dry storage aroma, and what the Dry Storage Gentlemen talk about of this, they call it kind of even an orchid fragrance. It definitely has this sweetness to it. I'm not gonna drink the rinse of this because it's old enough that I don't want particularly to drink the rinse. I only try, however, if I'm trying a tea, I have a sip just so that I can kind of start to have an idea of how the tea is. And this will inform my first brew. I've had this tea twice before. Thought it was pretty good. This kind of tea is kind of, even though it's been dry stored, it's been kind of actively being aged. So ideally, I would want to have opened this. I would either open the whole, if I'm gonna drink it, I'm either gonna open the whole cake and put it in a jar like this. So this jar is not super airtight, however, it has got Boveda pack inside. So this keeps the humidity. This is a different cake, but it was just to show you how I would keep this kind of tea after it's been actively stored. So yeah, even though the seal is not great, it's got a humidity pack in it, so this will keep it humid enough. Well, I'm pretty sure I overbrewed this, actually. As I was saying, this is the trickiest kind of tea to brew. I try to not fill up the pot completely and instead have a little bit more space in the teapot than I would with other categories of tea that are a bit more forgiving. Sweetness, the depth of smell is medium, it's not really high. Let's see what we got. I think I overbrewed it, but we shall see. Okay, so here's how the steeping looks like. So yeah, this color is what I call semi-aged. It's clearly darker than orange, but it's more of a dark orange rather than being brown. Well, or light brown. So yeah, I think I've overbrewed it a tiny bit. When I say these teas are tricky to brew, and a tricky category in general, is because if they're store dry, they have enough sourness, harshness to it. And this is something I find a lot with so many of these different teas. Like really compared to the smoothness of real ancient tree before and the smoothness of longer aging, a lot of semi-aged teas feel really, really harsh. And this is something that I have found more and more as I drink puerh. So I used to really, really like this kind of category of tea because I hadn't found great teas in both categories before and after. But now I find this a bit more difficult. Sorry for looking out, my cat is looking in from the windows. However, this cake is got a fair amount of big tree, possibly even old tree in it. The material of it is much better than the average of the era. It's much better than the stuff you will find in the book. And because of that, even though I overbrewed it a tiny bit, it's not really that harsh. It's got quite a lot of acidity and power to it. Some good bitterness, you can feel on the tongue. But it's not overbearing. In general also, because this tea has been going active aging and I didn't break it up before drinking it, the first sip can feel a little bit kind of harsh or off or not very smooth. This is quite forgivable in this category of tea, is actually quite expected. So, however, if I do break it up and put it in something like this, or I could just break it up a small amount and simply put it in something like this, then the flavor will improve. And by improve, I mean get much smoother pretty quickly, even in a space of a month. Okay, let's try another infusion. I'm going to try and do it a little bit lighter now. I pre-brewed this water to 100 degrees before. Yeah, there's many cakes on this category. So I just recently did this brew puerh like a pro course, and in there I brewed two other teas with this category. They are 2003 Hong Kong Gallery Series Formula and 2001 Yi Changao. And then here we got a couple more. I'll tell you later what I think of all of them compared. You can probably know where this is going. Let's see, slightly lighter steep. However, because this is aged enough, I want to keep my temperature more to 100 degrees, and perhaps it wasn't quite 100, maybe it was a little bit more like 95. So this looks a little bit light, actually, but let's see what we get. In general, if with younger and older tea, I try to make it peak infusion around infusion 2 or 3. With tea like this, because of the possible harshness and active storage that's been going on, I try to have maybe the peak infusion a little bit later on in the session, like maybe 3 or 4, because the first two can be more harsh, comparatively more harsh than the rest of the session. So it's okay that this is quite light. This is nice. Quite a lot of sweetness and huigan. Clean. Now that it's a bit lighter, it drinks really, really clean. Nice. Quite like this. Even though it was light, there's quite a lot of smells and sweetness, huigan. Even the little bitterness and there was turned into sweetness. What really attracted me about this cake is that it has a really, really good base. The material is very good. I'm gonna show you the cake in a moment. In fact, let me show it to you now. So this is how it looks like. So you can tell from this was made by Menghai Factory as a commission. And this is how it looks inside. It's got a red ribbon. Now what does that mean? Well, often a red ribbon means higher quality than standard production. In this case, it's really, really true. You can see that the leaves are quite big for this kind of age of cake. The cords of the tea are quite tight, and there is still some brightness, so you can tell the storage was actually properly dry. This is from the back. I just carved off some bits. The smell of this is not very high, which is what I really would expect on an older tea. Usually, if they've been exposed to any kind of air, it doesn't keep so much smell in the leaves, but then it comes out really strongly when you drink it. Yeah. So yeah, that's how that looks like. For comparison, this is the, let me show you the 7501. 7501, 7502, 7502, sorry. And so this is a 2001 7502 by Menghai Factory. And so that looks like. And here, this was compressed quite a bit more hard, so I had to take a chunk off. Instead, I couldn't carve it from the back. The leaves look a little bit more rough. But the kind of aging stage looks pretty similar. You shouldn't use side by side. And in fact, they do drink, in terms of aging, they do drink relatively similar. The red ribbon is much more, well, it's much more shiny, which means the storage has been dry throughout, as opposed to being dry only for a certain amount of time. I expect this Mr. Chen cake, like his other ones, has been stored in Hong Kong for a couple of years, at least. But because it was made in 2001, probably only a couple of years before before he brought it home to Taiwan. So you saw a couple of cakes, and then if you want to see more on the brew puerh like a pro, you're gonna find the Hong Kong Gary and the Yichang. So, what do I think of all of these teas? Well, this red ribbon is by far the best of all of them. The material has got a really, really strong base, and although, you know, it would be silly to think this is all three. Like, it's like in the late 90s, nobody did all three. And in the very early 2000s, Chin Hao did 1 or 2 cakes. And before this, nobody just did all three. So, you know, if somebody ever tries to sell you all 3 cakes from the 90s or before, be doubtful. It's possible that from the 60s and earlier they were there, but the cost of those are really in the thousands and thousands. So with that said, it's obviously not a pure ancient tree cake that you find today, but the material appears to be at least big tree. There might be a little bit of old tree mixed in it. Sometimes these blends were made from menghai material, and they try to get the best materials they could find. They knew already that plantation wasn't, and but whether they knew that just teas growing in the wild, well, teas growing, bigger plants, so like small and big trees, they knew this were better than plantation material. That much they had figured out. Whether they figured out that an older tree was even better, that's debatable. Have I ever steeped this as well? No, looks about right. So let me put one thing clear. If this was stored a little bit more dry, it would drink smoother than it does right now. I could push it even further. I could make absolutely strong brews that I cannot make in its current state. However, it would have some storage flavor. You wouldn't be able to age it further in a dry way, which keeps a lot of complexity. And so we are actually, I have access to exactly the same cake in a more natural aging. We don't choose to sell or promote this because we find that in the dry storage, there's a purity and complexity, both right now, but also as an aging potential, even in a Western environment, that is just destroyed by storage that's been a little bit too wet. That's why we offer this. And that's why I'm really, really happy to have this actually dry stored cake. Show you the color of this. So yeah, I would say this is trickier to brew. It's more difficult to brew than a cake that has more natural storage, but it's cleaner, it's stronger, it's kept its soul much better. And eventually, when the more you drink tea, the more you will want dry stored tea. And having something like this in 5-10 years will be something that you will be very, very happy to. While if it was natural stored, you might just drink it right now, and then that would be that. So these days, people do understand about dry storage quite a lot, and a lot of these are dry stored. We have a lot of these old tree teas as well. But to find something so old, dry stored, at such a decent price, difficult. And that's the reason why we don't really offer so many semi-aged cakes. Older teas are even harder to find, but we have two collectors, or Mr. Chan and another guy, that had some tea. They sold it to us for very little compared to market price. Excuse me. That's why we could afford to offer that at decent pricing. But yeah, semi-age has been really, really difficult. So we only offer Hong Kong Airy and this cake. We had a couple more perhaps, but they either sold out or being restocked. The 2001 menghai is the one I'm thinking about. That's also in this same age. This is miles better than the menghai as well. Nice. Yeah, it's got this power to it. It has, if I brew it strong, it has a tiny bit of sourness in the aftertaste, which is obviously not very smooth. But it doesn't concern me because it's relatively very low for what it is. And this is a tea that right now I can drink as one of the best in its kind. As in the semi-age category, this is one of the best kind of experiences you can find. And it's going to cost you so much less than a lot of other famous menghai cakes that have the same extra drinking experience with perhaps even slightly less good material. However, this is something that if I keep for about 5-10 years, it's going to improve even more. Quite a bit of nice sweet aftertaste now as well. Okay, I think I have rumbled enough about how much I love this cake and how difficult it is to find other semi-aged cakes and why we haven't offered yet. Quite a lot of customers have asked me, do you have something else? And yeah, I used to drink this category of tea quite a lot, but then when I found out how much better quality and value was available on the other two sides of the spectrum, older tray for newer tea and more age but still smooth tea for older tea, then yeah, it's a category that I have been drinking less and less. And when I do, I really need to keep in mind the historical context of it. That yeah, I cannot make this 1 minute steeps or crazy intense steeps I would be able to do with the younger teas or the older teas, but I will in a few years. And at the same time, it's got this really satisfying, bitter, strong menghai taste while keeping a lot of complexity. That's really the beauty of this tea. All right, I will have one last steep. Try and do this a little bit stronger, see what comes out. Yeah, really happy to have found this. Really happy to have found the dry store gentleman. It's really hard to find good sources in Taiwan. They usually fall in two categories. Either they are very commercially aware and a cake like this would easily cost 2,000 USD, or their storage is really dunk, and then that's kind of very little point for me in drinking something like that, because I have older tea that's been stored more dry will always outperform younger tea that's been stored more naturally. And yeah, it's really interesting to see how the people that are really into it, they go towards dry storage in really quite extreme ways. I've been at a tea session with some guy, and this guy brought out his 99 menghai. I think it was the one with the green tree on it, a famous tea, and it was so dry that it was really quite harsh and strong to drink. And I think appreciating that kind of tea really, it just really requires a lot of historical context and understanding of where puerh came from and where it's gonna go and how this tea will develop over the years. And I remember one of the other people that was there, he told me, look, this is how the taste of properly dry stored aged tea is. You remember that? Wonderful. All right, let's try this last infusion. So to compare it, this one is not as dry as that. Or anyway, it might be as dry as that, but it's smoother. And that was a very expensive tea. And if you just drank it by yourself, really, you would be a bit like, why am I drinking this? Like, what's the point in this? While older tea and younger puerh, you really can, it kind of stands by itself. I think this kind of category of tea needs more understanding and refinement in one's palate and understanding of tea. Now it's got some nice thickness. It's smooth in the sense that there is enough sweetness and bitterness with relatively low astringency and also relatively low sourness. And yeah, there's complexities and there's different tastes going on at the same time. The smell left in the cup is low to medium, however. Anyway, I'm really glad I found this. It's, besides Hong Kong Airy, this is the only semi-aged cake I will store some tongs of for myself. I think the price is excellent for what it is. Great, I hope you enjoyed this tea review. See you soon.